Okay, let's talk about Elvis Presley. I mean, it's been nearly 50 years since he died, and yet the world is still completely captivated. Graceland is basically a shrine, his music is everywhere, his face, it's as iconic as ever. This is way more than just nostalgia, folks. This is a full-blown psychological phenomenon.
And that's the big question, right? That's the mystery we're going to try and solve today. How does one person keep such a tight grip on our imagination for half a century? What is really going on here? Because, see, the answer isn't just about the songs or the dance moves. The real key is understanding the deep psychological buttons he pushes inside all of us. So let's start decoding this obsession one piece at a time.
And the very first piece of the puzzle? It starts right where he did. It's a story that's basically baked into our culture. The ultimate American dream. I mean, that story alone has so much power. Psychologically, we are just wired to love a rags to riches tale. It gives us hope. It makes us feel like, hey, anything is possible. Elvis wasn't born into some elite family. He felt like one of us, who then, somehow, became a king. All right, let's get to the next clue. This one's all about this incredible tension that was always churning inside Elvis himself. The guy was a walk-in, talking contradiction. And honestly, that's what made him totally magnetic. So on one side, you have the sacred Elvis, the kid who grew up singing gospel music, who brought this almost religious fire to the stage. But then, on the other side, you had the profane, that rebellious sexuality, the way he moved his hips. It challenged every single rule in the 1950s. He was the saint and he was the sinner all at once. And you want to know why that's so powerful? It's because we see ourselves in that conflict. We all have that little war going on inside, right? Between our better angels and our wilder side. Elvis just blew it up and put it on a global stage. And in doing that, he showed us our own messy, complicated humanity. And this brings us to another layer of it all, that incredibly personal connection that fans feel they have with him. It's so much more than just liking his music. For millions of people, it feels like they actually know him. Just think about how people talk about him. They don't just say, oh, I like Elvis's songs. No, they talk about him like he's a brother or a friend they worry about. It's this deep, one-sided emotional investment. And there's actually a psychological term for exactly that. It's called a parasocial relationship. It's that feeling you get when you feel like you know a celebrity, even though obviously they have no idea who you are. Elvis was a master at building this kind of bond, but it wasn't just because he was famous. But here's the real secret. What made that bond so unbreakable wasn't how perfect he was. It was how flawed he was. His loneliness, his battles with addiction, that constant search for love. Those vulnerabilities made the legend feel like a real person. We connect with imperfection so much more deeply than we connect with perfection. And on top of that, the man had charisma like you wouldn't believe. Psychologists say charisma really boils down to three things. First, he had this incredible presence, like he was singing directly to you and only you. Second, he projected this raw power in his confidence, his voice, the way he moved. And third, he combined all of that with this genuine warmth that just pulled you right in. That combination, it leaves an emotional mark that never really goes away. Of course, you can't possibly talk about the Elvis legacy without talking about his death. His sudden, tragic death didn't end his story. It actually supercharged it. It froze him in time and, in a way, made him immortal. 42? That number is just, wow. He never got old. He never slowly faded from the spotlight. He was preserved, forever young, forever larger than life. And this process, it has a name too. It's called symbolic immortality. By dying young, his myth was protected. It never had to get old or decline. The story just stops, right at its peak, leaving him forever as this timeless, tragic hero in our minds. And that feeling is so intense that for many people, the story didn't actually stop there. The idea that someone that huge, that important, could just be gone? It's really hard for our brains to process, which leads to another pretty wild psychological response. Death denial? It's a natural way we cope. You know, all those Elvis sightings and conspiracy theories, they're not just silly stories. They're a psychological attempt to keep this meaningful figure alive, to push back against the idea of death itself. Okay, so finally, let's look at how all these pieces come together to create something even bigger. The Elvis obsession isn't just about one man. It's about the shared experience of being a fan.
and the many different versions of Elvis that people can connect with. See, what's so important to get is that Elvis was always changing. There was the raw, dangerous rebel of the 50s. Then you had the clean-cut movie star of the 60s. Then the black leather-clad king of the 68 comeback. And finally, the Vegas icon. There was an Elvis for every generation. And underneath all those changes, he was tapping into these powerful, universal ideas, these archetypes. The king, the rebel, the lover, the tragic hero. These are stories that are as old as time, which is why his own story feels so grand and so familiar to us on a deep, almost unconscious level. So in the end, this isn't some solitary obsession. The trips to Graceland, the fan clubs, Elvis Week, it's all about creating a community. Being an Elvis fan means you're part of a tribe, and that fulfills one of our deepest needs as human beings, the need to belong. Which brings us to what might be the heart of it all. After you peel back all of these psychological layers, you're left with this one simple, powerful truth. The reason we can't look away from Elvis is that when we look at him, we're really just seeing ourselves.
He reflects our dream of making something incredible out of nothing. He reflects our own internal fight between good and bad. He reflects our grief over what we've lost and our refusal to let it go. And more than anything, he reflects that deep human ache to connect with something bigger. So you know the famous announcement, Elvis has left the building? But after everything we've talked about, the real question is, has he ever really left our minds? Psychologically, it seems the king is here to stay.